Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is Jones. Report is for the 3rd of September, and it didn't take long. Everyone got back, and boom, they had a nice little selling spree, and then it got bought back up. And of course, in after hours, what do? They flip everyone around. So as all the call buyers looking for the breakout, were jumping in, then they hit them, and now once the put guys started getting in, they've just forced them into a cover situation, and those can sometimes push you into your new levels. We knew we had a little bit of weakness from an ES standpoint. It wasn't as bad from the ES standpoint, but we got that strong crossover that we were talking about as it was building from a DOC. And I've been pointing out this decaying shakeout, continuing lower peaks along higher highs. That's divergence, and we knew that that would catch up at some point. The Nasdaq, I think, it showed much stronger effect. We'd already had the MBI weight lead, and you were below 25, and yeah, that was ugly for the Nasdaq. And sure enough, but even in that, it was pretty quick turnaround. It didn't last but a fraction, but still, you've got much stronger negative shakeout. And this was even clearer. You can see that's a much worse histogram failing over time relative to where the S&P was. And so it's just balancing, and everyone's repositioning, looking for the next opportunity. And there's still a lot of confusion because I think you have the narrative game has really got people back and forth. The whole treasury situation, it's sort of built in now that we're headed towards the some type of cut. How big it will be, is Powell going to buck it, and is he able to convince the non-fired members, or are they going to be allowed to make a decision on that? And it's complicated. This is that unease that the markets aren't really happy with because um, they're thrilled, I'm sure, with the tariff ruling that came from the appeals court. But again, that's still going to get challenged, and it's not done yet. So it continues. From an oil standpoint, there was a nice bounce there, but then it's all faded back so far today. So it was pretty quick move. Though with that MBI weight spike, you would expect to move back towards the 0%. Now the question will be, will that be rising? And does that get you down in the low 60s, high 50s for oil? That would definitely be a bonus if that can happen. And we've already started to see a little bit of the ramp up of oil production from that. Of course, the euro, you listen to them. Uh, Crazy talk of Germany and the implosion that its economy is having because of the climate rules and uh, the investment they're shedding and jobs is crazy stuff. But they're still talking about, well, we need more immigration. That is doing wonderful for us, even though the numbers show that it's costing them staggering sums. We'll see how they play that out. But the fact that it's even held up this well is just about anti-Trump and thinking that the U.S. economy is going to fade. What we universally see is everybody agrees now that continued debasement of all fiat currencies. So gold, yeah, nowhere to go but even higher. Um, and this will also have an impact for crypto. Now, of course, they've been in a little bit of a winter. This followed NASDAQ. Actually, Precursor led the NASDAQ in a far deeper move, turning around a bit even while everything else was fading. But, that was just some of the movement of whale volume that was going all into ETH, but ETH did not quite have the same impact that BTC did. So now you get that balancing act that comes back in. And this is what we're looking for, is a mean reversion where everything gets into order again, and that hasn't happened yet. But the volatility certainly skyrocketed pretty quick. We expected it to happen. I didn't know that it was going to happen on the very first day. That's okay, because we saw this happening in the pre-market setup. MBI weight was leading, and sure enough, that led to a move to the zero. Only it just kept going because MBI weight continued to lead. Magenta stayed under yellow. It's about as clean as it gets from that standpoint. We were still in a DOC spread that had taken place from back over here. So you had a little bit of that rising momentum where Magenta was still leading there, and then it faded off. And sure enough, you got to, and this is always the nightmare case when you get to a positive shakeout or right at the edge of it that was just like at 0 point negative 0.6, and once it rolled over, you know you're headed way down, and that sure enough is exactly what happened within that, and it was pretty significant. But as you can see here in the pre-market, already made up almost all of it, and actually you've gotten back to just where that 0% was. How convenient, right? It works out well that way. The check out histogram on it is still pretty weak, and you've got to see a strong move of the DOC's green over cyan there to really be convincing. But you know, you're holding up pretty well here from a 15K standpoint, at least with the magenta over. But um, that's just more of an option play move. It really resets things and says, "Hey, big boys are back in town." And they're going to make things happen. This is what it looked like from 5 minute view. Early on, it was all fade there. There was a pump up right before the market opened, and then as soon as it opened, it went straight down. But by midday, everything started building, flipping around, and that's just the option book doing its thing. Nothing happened, relatively speaking, in the Asia session at all. And then here in the European, it's been pretty strong, and it's held through. So still continuing to look for significant data. We see the investment in the U.S. starting to actually show up, but housing and everything else still problematic with where interest rates are. Are they going to do something? I know Bassett was talking about housing emergency kind of situation, but it might be a hyperbolic at this particular stage. But we'll continue to follow the readings and go from there. As always, trade well. Have a good one.